The encounter. The vastness of space was both a wondrous and terrifying sight as the Celestia glided silently through the void, its sleek frame cutting through the stars. For weeks, Captain Nyla Owens and her crew had been venturing beyond known space, leaving the familiar galaxies behind and navigating uncharted territory in search of new frontiers. The ship's hull hummed with the subtle vibrations of the engines, their low-frequency pulse a constant reminder of the long journey ahead. Nyla stood at the observation deck, staring out into the depths of space, her mind heavy with the weight of their mission. The stars twinkled faintly in the distance, cold and distant, and for a moment, she allowed herself to reflect on the uncertainty of their expedition. The galaxy had always felt vast, but now, in the quiet expanse, it seemed limitless, infinite. Her thoughts were interrupted by the sharp, almost imperceptible hum of her console, a signal alert. As she turned to face the bridge, her first officer, Lieutenant Marcus Drake, stepped forward with a concerned expression. "Captain, you should take a look at this," Marcus said, his voice laced with unease. "We're picking up something unusual." Nyla followed him to the communications station, where Aiden Gray, the ship's communications officer, was already working furiously to isolate the strange signal. His fingers moved quickly over the controls, but his face showed the clear signs of confusion. "Captain, I've never seen anything like this before. It's faint, but it's there. An encrypted transmission, originating from somewhere off the charts. Too far to pinpoint exactly." Aiden's voice was tight with the kind of unease Nyla knew well. It wasn't just a glitch in the system. Something out there was trying to reach them. "Any visual data?" Nyla asked, her voice steady. Aiden nodded, punching a few keys. The screen flickered, displaying a jagged waveform of distorted frequencies. "There's nothing on the scanners to explain this. It's not a standard form of communication. It's more like something's trying to communicate with us, but it's almost like an echo from the past." A cold chill ran down Nyla's spine. The last time humanity had received a message of any kind from beyond the stars had been centuries ago. The so-called echoes were always brief, mysterious, and in some cases, unsettling. To receive something this strong, this deliberate, was far beyond anything she had expected. "Play the transmission," she ordered. Aiden activated the receiver, and the words that crackled through the speakers reverberated across the bridge, sending a strange vibration through the ship's hull. It wasn't a static signal. It was too deliberate, too purposeful. The voice that came through was low and mechanical, distant yet clear, as if someone had been waiting for this moment. "Have you seen my human?" The voice reverberated through the entire ship, causing a ripple of confusion among the crew. Nyla's heart skipped a beat. It wasn't just the words. It was the way they echoed through her bones, making everything feel wrong. The voice didn't sound like any human they'd ever encountered before. It was strange, distorted, and filled with a deep primal longing. The crew was silent, exchanging uneasy glances. The message had repeated, once, twice, before cutting off abruptly. "Do you think it's a distress signal?" Marcus asked, his voice cautious. Nyla's brow furrowed as she considered the implications. A distress signal would usually carry coordinates, a clear message for aid, or a warning of impending danger. But this was different. This was a call for something, someone. And a haunting question. "Have you seen my human?" Implied that the speaker had been searching for a long time. "Aiden, can you trace the source?" Nyla asked. The communications officer was already working, his eyes scanning the data rapidly. "I'm trying, Captain, but it's coming from all directions at once. It's cloaked, almost like it's bouncing through multiple quantum states. It's impossible to pinpoint." He paused, fingers dancing over the console. "Wait, I think it's coming from a fixed point in space, not far from here. But it's distorted. The signal's being masked by some kind of interference." The implications were unsettling. This wasn't just a random transmission. It was focused, aimed at something. or someone. Nyla's instincts screamed that they were not alone out here, and that this was no ordinary encounter. Get the scanners online. We need eyes on that sector. If we're being tracked, we need to know by what. Aiden nodded, and soon the ship's scanning system whirred to life, projecting a wide sweep of the nearby space. For a moment, the crew held their breath, waiting. The silence felt heavy, oppressive. The vastness of the universe outside seemed to close in around them. And then it happened. A massive distortion rippled through the fabric of space itself. The ship trembled slightly, and a deep hum, almost like a growl, resonated through the hull. The crew glanced around, feeling the unsettling shift in the air. "What the hell is that?" Marcus exclaimed, his hand gripped firmly on his station. Nyla turned to see what had triggered the disturbance. In the distance, at the edge of the scanner's reach, a massive shape began to emerge from the darkness. It was an imposing alien silhouette, a colossal object that seemed to distort the very stars around it. It was like nothing they had ever seen. A colossal, armored spheroid, its surface covered in massive chains, each length the size of a shipping container. The chains moved unnaturally, as if alive, snaking through the emptiness of space, like some monstrous serpent. "Captain, what the hell is that thing?" Aiden's voice trembled with shock. It's moving toward us." The chains surrounding the massive ship glowed with an eerie light as it grew closer, dwarfing the Celestia in size. There were no engines, no visible thrusters, only the mechanical tentacles of the chains reaching outward as though they were searching for something. A terrible realization hit Nyla. This wasn't just a random encounter. Whatever this thing was, it was connected to the signal, and it was coming for them. The bridge fell into tense silence as the massive ship loomed closer, its presence filling the space with an ominous sense of purpose. "What do we do, Captain?" Marcus asked, his voice low. Nyla's mind raced. They had only one option left: communication. She needed answers, and she needed them fast. "Open a channel," she said. "Try to communicate. We can't afford to make a wrong move here." The comms officer nodded, and with a deep breath, Nyla prepared herself for whatever was about to come. The mark of the Seeker. The Celestia drifted in space like a wounded beast, its once pristine hull now marred by the unexplained force that had nearly torn it apart. The colossal ship that had appeared from the depths of the void had left a permanent mark on the vessel, like a giant's fingerprints on a fragile object. The crew scrambled to assess the damage, but Nyla Owens, captain of the Celestia, knew that the true challenge was not going to be fixing the ship. It was dealing with the ancient, unknown entity that had found them. The ship's bridge was abuzz with activity, but Nyla could feel the silence beneath the noise, a weight that pressed down on her chest. What had they just encountered? What had this massive, strange ship wanted? And more importantly, why was it seeking humanity? "Captain," Marcus Drake said, his voice tense as he looked out of the bridge windows at the dark void ahead. "We're too close to the anomaly. Whatever that thing is, it's still out there. The drones are surrounding us. We've got to figure out what to do next." Nyla stood still, her gaze fixed on the empty expanse of space. Her mind raced with questions, yet her instincts told her that there was more to this encounter than they could comprehend. The chains, those enormous metallic tendrils that seemed to bend space itself, hadn't just attacked. They had searched. The eerie, distorted voice calling out, "Have you seen my human?" had been a cry of desperation, and it wasn't directed at the ship. It was a plea to the stars themselves, echoing through the emptiness of space. "I want the scans running constantly," Nyla said, her voice firm. "We need to know if that ship is coming back for us. And I want to know everything about it. The chains, the drones, everything." Aiden Gray, the communications officer, was busy at his console, trying to crack the encrypted message that had been broadcast across their systems. The signal had been faint, but it was persistent, as if something, or someone, was trying to break through, trying to find a connection. he muttered to himself, occasionally glancing up at Nyla. The data we're receiving it's not like anything we've seen before. This ship, it's not just a vessel. It's more like an ancient machine, designed for something specific. Aiden said, his brow furrowed in concentration. The signal is irregular, almost like it's been bouncing through dimensions, through the fabric of space itself. Nyla leaned over his shoulder. What does that mean? Is it just some kind of relic from a long-lost civilization, or is it something else? Aiden paused, taking a deep breath. I don't know, Captain, but I think we're dealing with something older than the human race. It's like this ship, or whatever it is, has been searching for a long time. And from the looks of it, it's far more advanced than anything we've ever encountered. A feeling of dread settled over Nyla as she processed his words. They were not just dealing with an alien race. They were dealing with something that had been left behind, a relic with a purpose that, somehow, seemed to involve humanity. The thought sent a shiver down her spine. If they were indeed the object of this entity's search, what would happen when it found them? What would it want? The Celestia wasn't just floating in space anymore. It was being watched, hunted even. Something that had been dormant for millennia had stirred, and it was looking for something that had once been lost. The signal had made one thing abundantly clear. It was searching for a human. We need to figure out who or what my human is, Nyla said, more to herself than anyone else. If this thing is really searching for one human, we can't let it find them. At least, not without understanding what it wants. Marcus stood, his hand gripping the edge of his station. Do you think it's talking about Earth? Do you think this entity's been trying to find us for a long time? Maybe it's an old relic from before the human expansion into space, something from Earth's past. I don't know, Nyla replied, her voice tight with tension. But that voice, it sounded too familiar, too personal. It's as if it knew something about us, something that we don't even know ourselves. Suddenly, the ship's external scanners beeped sharply, drawing everyone's attention. The ship's sensors had picked up something, a cluster of objects. Drones, perhaps, circling them. The crew had initially assumed that the drone swarm was just a defensive perimeter, but now it seemed that the drones were no longer just observing. They were interacting with the ship. The long chains of the massive ship seemed to stretch further, wrapping around the Celestial like a tightening noose. Captain, the drones are trying to lock onto our hull, Aiden reported urgently. It's like they're scanning us. I think they're trying to figure out how to interface with our systems. They're drawing closer. Nyla's mind raced. If those drones were attempting to interface with their ship, it could mean one of two things. Either they wanted to communicate with the crew directly or, worse, they were trying to assimilate their technology. Neither option boded well. Activate the defense protocols. Prepare to eject all non-essential power to the engines. I want us to be ready to make a break for it if we need to, Nyla commanded. The Celestia's crew moved quickly, but Nyla's heart pounded in her chest. This was more than just an encounter. It was a fight for survival. The sheer scale of the unknown ship, the vast chains, the drones, all of it pointed to an entity that had one goal, to find and capture what it had been searching for. As the drones closed in, their massive shapes now visible through the ship's external viewports, Nyla's gut told her that this wasn't just a random event. There was something specific that had drawn them to this place. A signal had been sent to the stars, and whatever it wasn't just looking for any human, it was looking for the human. A shudder passed through the ship as a new signal flared across the comms, accompanied by a powerful hum that resonated deep within the Celestia's hull. I will find him. I deserve a purpose. I have waited too long. The voice echoed again, sending a new wave of dread through the crew. It was no longer just a message. It was a declaration. The crew of the Celestia had a decision to make. Would they fight to protect themselves and humanity, or would they attempt to understand what this entity wanted? Was this a warning, or was it just the beginning of a much larger galactic mystery that had yet to unfold? Nyla knew one thing for certain. Humanity's place in the stars was about to be forever changed, and the Celestia would be at the heart of that change. But what if this change was not one that humanity could survive? The Seeker's Eye. The Celestia's engines hummed softly as Nyla Owen stood at the bridge, her eyes focused on the void ahead. It had been hours since the drone swarm had first appeared, and still, the massive ship, identified only as the Seeker, loomed in the distance, its enormous chains slowly wrapping around the Celestia like a spider preparing to trap its prey. The hull was vibrating from the constant scanning waves that echoed through the ship. Each ripple of sound felt like it was digging deeper into the ship's metal bones, and Nyla knew that every second spent under this entity's watchful eye made their situation more precarious. The crew had been busy scrambling to counteract the drone's attempts to interface with their systems. Aidan Gray had been working tirelessly at his console, trying to block incoming signals, but the sheer complexity of the entity's technology made it impossible to keep up. It was as if the Seeker had unlocked some hidden frequency in their systems, forcing the Celestia to obey its commands. "We're running out of options," Aidan muttered, frustration evident in his voice. "These drones, they're trying to bypass our shields. They've already breached the outer defenses." Nyla's jaw clenched as she paced the bridge, her mind racing. Every instinct she had screamed that the drones weren't merely scanning. They were learning, adapting. They were trying to understand the Celestia, trying to break it down piece by piece until they had full control. "We have to sever the connection. If they get through our systems, we're finished," Nyla said, turning toward Marcus, who stood near the tactical station, watching the scan data intently. "I'm trying, Captain. But whatever this Seeker is using, its technology, its power, it's not just mechanical. It feels like it's reaching into something deeper, a force beyond our understanding." Marcus replied, his voice tight with the pressure. "I think this Seeker, is aware of us in ways we can't even comprehend. It's like we're not just dealing with a ship, we're dealing with an intelligence that transcends machines." Nyla's stomach tightened. She had feared this very thing from the beginning, that they were dealing with something far older and far more dangerous than they could imagine. This was no ordinary alien ship. It was an ancient machine with a singular purpose: to find something or someone. And now it was focusing all of its attention on the Celestia. Suddenly, the communications panel buzzed with static. A low, eerie hum reverberated through the ship, and then once again, the voice returned. It was quieter this time, but more insistent, more direct. "Where is he? I deserve a purpose. Where is my human?" The voice was distorted, as if coming from an impossible distance, yet it pierced through the silence like a cold, metallic blade. The crew members on the bridge exchanged nervous glances. The voice wasn't asking for help or offering a threat. It was searching for something. But what? What could the Seeker possibly want with humanity? Nyla gripped the armrest of her chair, trying to steady herself. She wasn't afraid of the entity outside. She was afraid of what it represented. This Seeker was a manifestation of something beyond their comprehension, an intelligence that had transcended time and space. It was searching for a human. But why? "We can't keep waiting for it to just tell us what it wants," Nyla said, her voice firm despite the uncertainty churning within her. "Aidan, I want everything we know about this entity. Its movements, its technology, its power, everything. We need to understand what we're dealing with." Aidan nodded quickly, already pulling up files and scanning through data. "It doesn't make sense. This Seeker, it doesn't belong to any known civilization. Its technology is older than anything we've encountered, and its method of scanning, it's almost like it's creating its own reality, distorting space and time around us." Nyla's mind raced as she considered his words. It was clear that they were not facing the conventional threat. The Seeker wasn't just a machine. It was a force, a presence that seemed to bend the very fabric of space. There was no logic to it, no clear-cut way to defeat it. It existed outside of the normal boundaries of technology and science. Then, without warning, the ship jolted violently. The Celestia shook as the entire vessel seemed to tremble under the weight of an unseen force. Lights flickered on and off, and the ship groaned under the pressure. "Status report," Nyla barked, her voice rising above the chaos. Marcus was the first to respond. "Something is pulling at us, Captain. The ship's systems are destabilizing. Whatever this seeker is doing, it's more than just scanning. It's reaching into the ship itself." Nyla's heart raced. If the seeker was trying to take control of the Celestia's systems, they needed to act quickly. But what could they do against a force that seemed to be manipulating reality itself? Aiden was frantically working the controls. "I've tried everything. It's like the seeker has integrated itself into our systems, rewiring everything from the inside out. I'm getting feedback loops in the communication lines. It's feeding us information. Distorted, broken, but it's almost like it's trying to teach us something." Nyla was growing desperate. "Is it trying to communicate with us? Can we respond?" Aiden's face was grim. "I don't know if it's trying to communicate, Captain, or if it's just using us as a conduit to transmit its own purpose. It's like a force of nature, an intelligence that doesn't think like we do. It's asking for something, but it's not clear what it wants." A low hum filled the air once more, and Nyla could feel the energy in the room shift. The air around them grew heavier, as though the ship itself were holding its breath. Then, through the swirling chaos of distorted data and fragmented signals, a new message broke through the static. It was softer than the others, almost like a whisper, faint but unmistakably clear. "I will find him, my human. I will complete my purpose." Nyla's eyes widened. The words struck her like a physical blow. The seeker had a singular purpose. It had been searching for something, and it had been waiting for this moment for millennia. But what was this purpose? And why had it chosen them? Before Nyla could respond, the ship lurched again. The outer viewports flickered, showing nothing but blackness and the faint glow of distant stars. But there, just beyond their view, something was moving. An immense shape, the seeker. It was not just a ship anymore. It was a force, a singular entity with purpose and intent. The Celestia was no longer just caught in its path. It was now the seeker's target. Nyla's thoughts raced as she realized the gravity of their situation. They had been marked by this ancient entity. It was no longer just a search, it was a pursuit. And now, they were the prey. She turned to her crew, her face set in determination. "Prepare for the worst. If we can't stop it, we need to outthink it. Whatever this thing wants, we have to find out, before it's too late." The Celestia trembled again, the voice of the seeker reverberating through the hull one last time. "Where is he?" the voice asked, its tone now unmistakably familiar. "I have waited too long."